Hey guys, it's me. I made a little spy config for you guys because I thought it might interest you, and I thought it would be worth making this video because the way I structured it is a bit different from probably the other spy configs you've downloaded in the past, and it features a few more interesting, I would call them, details and little features that I think are worth explaining right here. If you refer to my link and you don't really know what you're looking at, this video is, here to explain everything. So, the first thing you may notice is that the config is split between two different folders, one called settings and one called other. I'll start by explaining what the settings folder contains because it's probably a lot closer to the other spy main configs you've downloaded in the past. So here we have a pretty regular setup. We have a CFG folder, we have a custom folder, and we have a custom mods folder. I'd say it's pretty self-explanatory. Of course, the CFG contains all my CFG files, which I'll get to later because they also need a little explaining. My custom folder, which contains my master config preset and my HUD, and my custom mods folder, which contains a selection of mods I periodically apply, which include a flat textures mod, no hats mod, and a no crit sound for spy backstabs mod. My CFG contains a user folder and a MISC folder. The user folder is a part of master config, and it contains all the personal CFGs you have set up so far. So that might include your autoexec, in this case my autoexec of course, your class CFGs, and in this case my master config modules, and a bunch of other things that are interconnected with my MISC folder. Here you'll find a crosshair flashing script, a no movement script, different lerp configurations, as well as other useful scripts that you can separately execute from the console. This is what ideally you should see when you first launch up my config. As you can see, there's a bunch of different messages, including some binds that I've set up that you may change in case they inconvenience you, and a bunch of commands that you can input inside the console to execute different scripts from this MISC folder that I've mentioned. I will go on walkway and show you a bit how they work. It's pretty simple. So say I'm playing the game normally and I've been using my exact settings for a while. I want to spice things up just a little bit. I just want to change a few things. I can enable ragdolls by just typing ragdolls. I can enable a crosshair flasher by typing crosshair flasher. And now I have executed both of the scripts and they're already fully in use and, ready. This of course applies to all of the scripts that are inside the MISC folder, and if I don't know how many of them there are and I don't want to open the CFG, I can simply type please help into the console and see exactly which ones I can use. And now for some more general settings. I've bound page down to my min mode view model toggling. I've bound page up to my view model FOV toggling. I've bound my delete key to my crosshair scale. I've bound N to my draw view models setting, and I bound insert to my crosshair color setting, which cycles between white, yellow, and green. And one last thing regarding the scripting part of my config. There's specific scripts that automatically execute when you launch the config and just download it the way it is, and others you have to execute yourself when you're in game. However, you can change which scripts automatically execute when you open the game and which scripts don't by going into user, custom, and changing it from there. Of course, unbracketing an exec line means that you're deciding to execute. That means to launch this specific configuration file when you're opening the game, and vice versa. And now for the more novelty aspect of my config, the other folder. This folder contains what I like to call spy visual overhauls, and the name might sound a bit silly because the concept is a bit silly, but since I'm making this config for some of my viewers and some of my friends, I thought as well I might as well just throw this in because it's something I personally enjoy doing with my game. And what I mean by visual config is basically each of these folders contain what you would call a recreation of the HUD and view model and crosshair settings of many of the spy mains I like watching, which you can apply by simply putting this VPK file and this folder inside your custom. I spent a few minutes trying to make this less cluttered. The original idea was to integrate both a CFG folder and the HUD separately, but I figured using a VPK would be a little more tidy. The process of applying these visual overhauls is pretty straightforward, as I already said. You just take these two files, you put them in your custom, and you forget about it. If you're having trouble applying these visual configs completely, it's very likely because your personal settings are interfering with them. And if you have any view model FOV or crosshair scale or type, anything like that specified in your own CFG files, they will most likely interfere with these configs. So if you want to use them, just make sure to take them out of your CFG folder and reapply them whenever you want to go back to your stock settings.